Hey guys, thanks for joining us again for the Giro Live as we wrap the Giro d'Italia. It's been a pretty exciting month, and we're going to go through, I think, Iffy and Scooter, they've got their best domestiques, best team ride, best moments, and we'll obviously unpack what happened in the time trial, and we're going to be joined as well by Neil the Sheriff Stevens to give us a bit of insight on Team Bahrain Victorious. I'm your host, Dan Jones, as always, joined by four-time national road champion Johnny Trevorrow, Olympic gold medalist Scotty McGrory. I'll start with you, Iffy. Did you see much of the time trial, and what were your thoughts overnight?
I did. I dozed early, so I missed a few getting off. I woke up with about an hour to go. I woke up to the highlights of Ghana puncturing, and I sort of think, he's leading. Okay, he's done a good ride. And then you got some shots there where he's punctured in just a couple of K, inside 2K to go. A very slick bike change. He went from the blue masterpiece to the black machine, and they did it as well as you could do it. But I thought, because we debated, I'd reckon that Cavagna was going to give him a run for his money. A bit different to Scotty, who didn't give Cavagna as much of a shot as I did. But there is Cavagna. I mean, seriously, 550 metres to go. He's about to win. He's about to beat Ghana first time ever. Because remembering he's running an hour after, so he knows everything has happened, knows all about it. And how you could not take that corner in any worse possible way. You couldn't have gone into that corner in any worse possible way. How his team car weren't yelling at him, left turn, move to the right. I don't know what happened there, a brain fade, but he to a little bit to his side, he actually hit something. I don't know what it is, but if you look at the vision, as he realises, I'm wrong, he hits something which actually kicks him the wrong way. So now he's got no hope. And he just goes straight into the barricades on the other side. Quick, get up and go. But there's no doubt that cost him more than 12 seconds. But in the end, take the puncture away, the placings are correct. So
who do you blame there, Scotty? Is it the team car or is it the rider's responsibility to know that where to be positioned into that last corner?
Look, a bit of both in the fact that they would have only done the course recce, as we spoke to Whitey yesterday, they're only doing the course reconnaissance the morning of. You can't remember every single corner for the entire 30 kilometre time trial. So bit of responsibility maybe from the team car to let them know. But the same token, he was coming to a clear left-hand corner on the left-hand side of the road. So he didn't even move across to the right and come in too fast. As Johnny said, you could not take that corner any more wrongly than what he did. So that's user error. That is, he just, you come around to the left, then there was the hard left, but he was still on the left-hand side. He didn't even swing right to try and go left. So that was just brain fade from Remy, unfortunately. And maybe the team car were yelling at him, saying, but it's too late. He just got on the anchors, and what he did hit was the barriers in the road, and that was it. Now, I said yesterday that Ghana was going to win by half a day. Johnny corrected me and said, "Look, Cavagna may give him a run for his money. Maybe he'll win by a quarter of a day." And then I didn't watch it at all last night. I got up and watched the replays this morning, and I got up and saw it was only 12 seconds. I thought, geez, I was a long way off. Then saw that he had a flat tyre and thought, he would have won by a lot more then, without knowing that Cavagna also had a mishap as well. So the two guns had stuff-ups, which is an unfortunate situation. Kind of evened it out then, did it, in the end? It was an even sort of result.
Yeah, I reckon the crash actually would have taken a fraction more time, only 3 or 4 seconds. So without either happening, Ghana wins. But he's only going to win it by 7 or 8 seconds. But Cavagna doesn't fall off. He wins the final stage, so he would be peeved. He hasn't won a lot. For as good as he is, our record holder, he hasn't won that many times. He's been running seconds and thirds to the second to Ghana quite a few times now. I'd like to see Google. You're the expert on Google, Scotty. How many times has he run second to Ghana? But look, you know what? It was an interesting day. We knew the first 3 places weren't going to change. for 1 second, a few commentators got a bit excited and started talking about Caruso.
At the start,
Caruso,
20
what's he
seconds.
gonna-
Whoa, look out. We're going to race. And it's like, no, hang on, boys.
A little bit
Yeah,
excited.
but when you also work out that it was a really fast bike change, but Gunnar had to, he slowed down normally, got off the bike, quick bike change. But then if you look at Cavagna, he stopped much quicker than Gunnar did. Gunnar had to slow down to get off the bike. Whereas Cavagna, he just jumped off it. So he was much, much faster at dismounting.
Well,
than Gunnar
he
was.
stopped pretty quickly. A barricade takes a bit of going through. So
Exactly.
he did stop pretty quickly.
Well, when we get Steve-O on, we've got to ask him about a famous story where he stuffed up in a team time trial, the left or the right around a roundabout. I think he said it was a hard left and it was a hard right, and worked it out just as though in the apex of the roundabout. Chavez told the story famously. I think it must have been from like the start of 2006 for Vuelta. And he's literally going, no, it's right. And they reckon they just held it up. So it does happen. It does happen.
Well, I'll do a quick iffy story.
Yes.
We wrote the Peace Race, 1973. Australia team, first time racing as a national team in the Peace Race. Wonderful race. It was the amateur Tour de France of that time. Went for about 16 days. Magic with the Eastern Bloc. With the
why
Russians.
did they call it the Peace Race?
Because most of those countries were at war.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it was the Eastern Bloc, so Czech Republic, Poland, East Germany. So it was made the race to bring people together.
Okay.
The East and the West, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Typical bullshit from the Eastern Bloc. But it was the year we rode was at Prague, Warsaw, Berlin. We finished in Berlin. So and I've still only ever been to East Berlin because I never went back to that area later on. So. So I looked at the wall from the other side. But the final stage was in the middle of Berlin, and I remember studying the map, and I knew that we went down this big boulevard, wide as anything. It had been raining and cobbles and the bunch was all crapping themselves. I'm right up near the front. I thought, I'm going to bloody win this. So I was pretty handy on the dirt tracks. It was a gravel, like a cinder running track finish. And Donnie Allen already won a wonderful stage a few days earlier on the cinder track, beating two of the biggest stars in world cycling. So brilliant. So I'm all G'd up, ready to go. Anyway, I've studied the map, and I know when we get to the end of this boulevard, the stadium on the right is where we go. And I had it all worked out. So as we're coming down, I moved right up to the outside, and I even started to veer right when the others veered left, and it was the stadium on the left. So somehow my lefts and rights got stuffed up, and instead of going onto you could only come on and do one lap, big 400 meter circuit. So I've coming on third or fourth wheel. I've come in at bloody 30th or 40th wheel, and I remember I passed most of the field under the final bend, and finished fifth. I was only seriously length and a half from winning the bloody final stage of the Peace Race. Another iffy story. Anyway,
would have won it.
If only.
If only.
If only. Yeah, but isn't it because they don't do it anymore? I finished on it was also a tour in Poland. I think we finished on a running track, not cinder, but it was a rubber running track, but 400 meters round. So sketchy. You come flying down a back alley, straight into the back straight at full speed into that final bend, which is, obviously it's flat and it's tight, and oh my god, everyone, by the time you get under the finishing straight, everyone was out on the fence and just tiptoeing around to try and get to the finish. So dangerous. They don't do that anymore. Now, Johnny, your question was Cavagna versus Ghana. It's 5-3. So Ghana has beaten Remy 5 times, and Cavagna has beaten Filippo 3 times. So the 2016 under-23 World Championships in the time trial, go back then.
Okay.
Cavagna was 13th and Ghana was 14th. So if you go back there, he was actually he was focusing on track a lot more back then. He was focusing a lot more on the velodrome. But at the Tour of Romandy this year, both time trials, Remy beat Filippo in those 2 time trials, which was a bit of a surprise because Ghana was off at Tour of Romandy. Yeah. He's been better than him in everything else, though. Every other time.
There you go.
Now, obviously, we've enjoyed having Matt White on every day, and it was a fantastic effort for Yatesy to finish third at the Giro. Here is the final part of their backstage pass where they wrap up the month.
That one hurt. It was really a difficult race. Of course, happy to finish it off. Finish the Giro, and now we'll celebrate properly. Some good wine, Richardson probably, and we'll really enjoy ourselves.
I think we can be very pleased with the performance of the team. We set out with the goal of definitely going for podium, going for a stage win. We came out with the podium, we came out with the stage win.
Any Grand Tour where you arrive on the podium is a success, and a sensational stage win to match as well. And
Very pleased with the performance of the team. The whole team really worked well. All the guys gave everything that they had, and we missed Schultze for sure in the last few stages, but I think we can be very pleased with the performance.
the way the boys rode, committed 100% to Simon from day one all the way to the end was very pleasing. Simon gave 100%. And we can leave here with our heads hanging very high. Victories like this and podiums like this, it involves a lot of people, a lot of work, and we're just there to support the boys to do their best, and they certainly gave it 100% for the organisation this month.
Fantastic 3 weeks, as always. Just like hanging out with your mates for 3 weeks. Couldn't ask for a better time.
Back down. No, I won't back down.
Good to see Tom Petty's getting a run again. We won't back down. They've winding the clock back to 2012. But no, I mean, they should be commended. And it always is this, at the end of a Grand Tour, either being part of the media or in the team or whatever, there is just a pressure valve that is released when the riders finally cross the line and you got through that month. Because we often talk about on this show, the dangerous stages are like stage 12, 13 to about 18. Because you're in that middle zone, you're tired, you're doing the transfers, you're cooked. But then when you finally get to the finish and you can just let it all out, that's when you can reflect. And if you no doubt that they're going to look back on this month and it'll be a bit of a green tick. They would have loved to have won, but a stage win and third place is nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, well, I think it's more than a bit of a green tick. It's definitely a green tick. What impressed me so much, well, Yatesy's stage win was wonderful. And it's one of the great stage wins. I've listed my 4 favourite stage wins as one of them because it changed the race. Anything that changed the race is special. It changed the race in that first time anyone had put Bernal under pressure that we actually saw a small crack. It was only a small one. It was the start of something. So, so that was special. But what really impressed me was all through the tour, they've had their jobs to do. They've done them. We know Simon had some issues in the first week. He had, little niggles and that. So he couldn't be his normal self, but they just kept at it, kept strong. But in that last week, when they were required, it was wonderful to watch Bike Exchange on the front, closing gaps, not letting breaks go. That stage that he won, if they'd have done that, there's no way Yatesy would have won that stage. He might have done everything that he did and taken that time out of Bernal, but it wouldn't have been a stage win. It was the boys who just drove it. And they did that on 3 different occasions, or more than 3, but 3 special days that kept this bike race alive. And it was Bike Exchange stepping up. So it was wonderful to see.
Scooter?
And I'm gonna tap the table as well when I speak.
Mate, your mic's struggling enough.
Yeah. Can you put up that podium photo again? 3 boys on the
yes.
front, if that's all right. How good is that? Look at the facial expressions on those guys. Like Bernal, obviously, come back from his back problems, but already won a Tour de France. His first goal was to win the Giro before that tour. Didn't happen. Won the Tour de France instead. Now he's come back. He's got a really close connection to Italy. It's the first country that he went to race. He came across when he was 19. I think the story was his coach took him to Italy when he was 19, said, this guy's really good, great mountain biker. He could win a Grand Tour. And your mate, John, your old boss, Gianni Savio, took him on board.
Snaffled him, yeah.
Snapped him up. So you can just see in his face the delight of actually now cracking this win. No doubt the Tour de France is bigger and more important, but I think to him, he's got a real connection to Italy, and that there's a lot you can see in his face there. Caruso, mate, he's thinking, what the hell am I doing here? This is fantastic. Absolutely loving it. And I think with Yatesy as well, he can be happy considering he did have a rough start. It looked like he was going to go all the way, towards the end and really upset the apple cart. But it settled kind of where he really was in the scheme of things. He'd be surprised by Caruso's ride. but I think he's happy to be on the podium. So that's a great shot. I like that.
I loved the comments from Caruso on the last rest day when some journalist asked him what he was doing. He said, "Well, unusual for me, I'm actually getting interviewed by media on the last rest day of a Grand Tour. This never happens. This never happens, you know." I thought it was wonderful.
Well, who better to ask about Damiano Caruso than Neil Stevens, who's DS with Team Bahrain Victorious. He joins us now. Sheriff, how are you travelling, mate?
Yeah, all going good. Thanks, fellas. How you guys going, all right?
Oh, not too bad, mate.
Good, mate.
We're going really well. But I'll tell you something just before Dan does. Can you put your phone sideways, mate?
Oh,
you
yeah,
want the sideways screen.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you
mate.
feel the screen. We're very, very strict on quality control on this show, mate.
First time I've ever got it in.
Mate, if you had seen the technical issues I've had this morning, mate, that's nothing. Just turn me side one way the other.
Mate, obviously the team must be ecstatic with second place at the Giro. What can you tell us about Caruso?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a funny, really lovely story, actually. You know, like we started the Giro off with all expectations on Landa. He's going good. He's ready to go. He did a great Tour de France last year. We're expecting big things of him in the Giro. And obviously, he started off well. Everything was going okay, and he had a spectacular crash, broke a heap of ribs and collarbone, and we sort of thought, well, what are we going to do next? Gino Madda come up with a great stage win. Then he had to pull out later on. But then, bloody hell, Caruso came back. He's a fantastic bloke. He's a really good support rider. He does the odd GC every now and again, but he's passionate about working. And to have him, he was thrown in there. We thought, right, there's no choice to go in there and give it a crack and see if we can run to the top 10. And as you saw, he just took everything in his stride. I think he enjoyed the moment, as Johnny said. You know, the fact that he was going around and doing interviews and that sort of stuff, that he wasn't sort of surprised. It was sort of not expected to do, and it all sort of culminated on the second to last day when the boys popped off the front there, and it was fantastic. It was probably the best bike race I've seen in many, many years.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you, Steve. I tell you what, it's one of my. I listened to my 4 favourite stages for the different reasons, and that's one of them. And it was because one, your team was almost non-existent. You're down to what? You have 4 riders left, and to have the balls to jump off the front that far out, and then have the ability to run it home was amazing. And I love the way. When what's his teammate's name who did that wonderful job that day? Yeah, the way he just when he'd spent his last, just thanks bud, tapped him on the shoulder and away he went, and he never eased up. He just went all the way to the line. Just one of the most magnificent stages for a guy who'd never won a world tour, like a top level pro race in his 12 or 13 years or whatever he's been a pro. So that's staggering, and it was wonderful.
It was fantastic, you know, and I think there was knowing the boys, and as you said, Damiano, he won a small race here last year in Spain. I don't know what else he's won, but he's really just a good support sort of role rider, very much like Pio Bilbao. And for the pair of them to get their heads together, crack off the front, and have it, like there was no major tactic involved there. I suppose the team, what they did was create an environment where the boys could actually believe in themselves. And give it a crack. And as you say, put the balls on the line and have a go. And, mate, it was bloody emotional to watch Pio to ride and go and giving it everything and sort of going to the last moment. And then Caruso, you could see he was just amazed by his mate. And like not only his teammate, but his mate there riding on the front for him. And like, who would have ever expected him to give him a pat in the back and say, thanks, mate? And then I'll give it a go now myself, you know? And it was just, bloody, nearly brought a tear to you, I reckon. And I think not only me, because I'm in the team, but for many other people as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that got respect universally, didn't it? All of the commentators and all the different languages that were covering the race, you know, were really full of praise for Damiano after the pat on the back. And I actually mentioned the other day that Jeremy Hunt told me a story years ago when he was riding with Benesto, and you know, as you know, Steve-O, he was a sprinter, not a climber, but he was in a race with his teammate Miguel Indurain, not that often. But this one time he was on the front, he had to ride for Big Mig. And when they started going up whatever climb it was, Jez has given him whatever he could, swung off. And as he was coming back down the group, Indurain just looked over to him and gave him a little bit of a wave and said thank you. And Jez didn't speak Spanish, but and Mick wasn't great with English, but he just at least told him thank you for your effort. And it was one of those little things that stuck with Jez, like, oh wow, Big said thank you, So yeah, nice guys doing the right thing, and I think that's what we saw from Damiano. So full
did he say it in Spanish or English?
Uh,
Because he might have said dickhead.
Is that all you got? You crappy sprinter. No, I can't. I have to ask.
Thank Christ you got off the front.
Yeah, now we can go. Get out of the way.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve,
You ruined a lovely story then, John. But anyway.
Steve, I was going to say, they often say, if you've got the leader's jersey, it gives you wings and all this sort of stuff. What effect does it have when your leader goes and then you get an opportunity like Caruso had that wouldn't have happened if Landa was there? Is this where you see riders show you something that you just didn't know was in there?
Yeah, I think you're probably right there, Dan. It showed there was a little bit of criticism one day that Yatesy attacked. He went off the front, and the Caruso and Bernal were in the back there, and actually Caruso gave Bernal a bit of a turn, and they were sort of saying there's a bit of mixed emotions there. People were sort of saying, yeah, but you're sort of defending your third place, but you're helping the first place, and maybe you should just attack Bernal instead of that. And so Damiano didn't say much, but then it must have planted that bit of a seed of doubt, and he thought, right, I'll give it a crack. It's not very often, if ever again, I'm going to get this position. That's where he sort of planted that seed, and then when he saw them coming over that mountain on the stage on Saturday, and they were all looking pretty comfortable, he said, I agree. I'll give it a crack then, and because you never know, he might not get a chance. He probably will now get a chance to do that sort of stuff ever again. But it is just a matter of getting on with the job and having a bit of a crack. And I suppose, as you say, that when the pat in the back really showed, it's human emotions. It's just mateship, and it's above sport, and that sort of feel was what he gave it a crack, and he could walk away on Sunday at the end of the Giro with win, lose or draw. He's given it his best shot, and then he can be happy with himself.
Very much so, and he did it the day before as well, because the stage that Yatesy won, when he went clear, Caruso went up to him, so he dropped Bernal, come up to him. In the end, he blew and went back and lost a couple of seconds, but he gave it a crack that day as well. So he didn't die wondering.
Yeah, I actually reckon that was a bit of a mistake. He rode through the whole Giro right on his capabilities, and then he got a bit emotional on the day before when Yatesy won. Yatesy on the steep climbs, he's very, very hard to beat, and he had a great attack, and then Damiano thought, right, I'll go with this, and then he thought, hang on, whoa, and then that's when he went back and he actually spent a bit too many bickies, and so yeah, you got to know when to. It's like the old poker thing, you got to know when to hold and you got to when to fold them, I suppose, and he sort of got a little bit too emotional. I thought, right, it's better to get Yates to get out there, yeah.
He said that. Yeah.
Well, one thing I noticed, Neil, I watched the Netflix series on Movie Star, and it was from the 2019 series, and obviously they focused on Landa and his relationship, but I think it was the Giro that Carapaz won, and it was all about Landa and Carapaz were sort of the joint leaders, and Carapaz showed his cards, and then he was a leader, and you could tell Landa really struggled with that side of things, and now with this result, I mean, you've got Caruso, it's a better finish than Landa's ever had. So how do you manage now? You've got Caruso, you've got Landa, you've got the Vuelta coming up. How do you manage guys that essentially want to win, but do you have to go into a race like that now and go, well, we'll have to wait and see who's the strongest a week in?
Yeah, I suppose it is a tricky situation, and it's never easy in any team when you've got various leaders doing various things. Obviously, like in bike exchange, for example, you're going into the tour with GC hopes, and also you got Michael Matthews trying to go for stages as well. How do you manage that? But I suppose in our situation, we've got Lander. He's very focused, very centered on what he wants to do. And in the Movistar team, they had a few ups and downs. I never actually saw that documentary though. But
it's no all for one, mate, but it's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should say that about all for one. I tend to think that what we all did, all of us here in this chat, we did in the Green Edge team was try to create an environment where it is all for one, and so that when you see one of your teammates going up the road and giving it a crack, and you don't think, oh, bloody thing, he's getting ahead of me, and think about yourself. It's about creating an environment where you're willing to put it on the line, because today it's for him and tomorrow might be for you, And so I haven't done that many races with Lander up until now, but what I have seen of him, he's not as complicated as what's been made out in the press to be. What I did in the Tour of the Basque Country, he had situations where actually Pellier Bilbao was going up the road, and he almost won a stage, and Mikael was on the radio talking to him more than I was, giving him the tips and watch out for this, watch out for that. So he was a really good teammate. And so Lander, obviously, he's going on to the Vuelta. He's pretty banged up still from his Giro crash, and so I'm really looking forward to that. But I can't imagine, it's a tricky creates tricky situations for the team. But the boys, they're a good bunch of blokes, and they just need a bit of a reminder of what's the priorities of the team every now and again.
Steve-O, that takes me back to Harold Suntour in the mid to late 80s.
Here we go.
When you and Alan Piper were leading. You're running first and second in the Harold Suntour. One of you is going to win it, and you guys had no worries sorting that out.
What happened, Neil?
Oh, God, I'm an old man now.
What did you do, Neil? Did you get the red texter out?
That's where that vein started to get created, and just a story about a couple of Aussies wanting to give it their best on the home turf, and I wanted to go out and I didn't race much in Europe at that stage, but I wanted to go back and give it a crack to try to win the Sun Tour, biggest race in Australia. And Alan Piper had spent many years going through some hard times in Europe on his own, and he wanted to get back and show the Australians what he could do as well. And what we never did was sit down before the race and actually talk about that. And so we got to the point where we got to the mountains, and he was in a chance to win it. I was in a chance to win. I was in the snow and that sort of stuff. I'll give it a crack. And there we were, first and second, and then he continued attacking. And so I can understand that, as I'm old now, and I can understand his ambitions and his feeling. But I think that, and it wasn't that smooth, the road, and I got the better of him. And but many years later, I had a man hug and sort of said, "Look, sorry about that, mate. It was a bit of a misunderstanding." And
many years later,
yeah. Took years to patch that one up.
Sorry about that, mate.
Took years to patch up.
Yeah. But anyway, it was the most important thing. We sat down many years later and had a beer or a cup of coffee or whatever we had, and had a chat about it. I've got a great relationship with Alan, so that's good.
Hey, Lander was very confident when the Giro, before he crashed. Was his data and that suggesting that he was on real top form? Do you think he could have really given it a shake at the pointy end?
Yeah, he was. He was on really good shape. He's not a guy that's obsessed with data, but he sort of goes on feelings, and his feelings were really good. But the data people were telling us that his data was really good, and he was actually just coming back down to race weight, and he's even been over a kilo or so. He was on ripping form, and so coming onto race time, he was really good. And you never know, maybe that bit of anxiety to know that everything is done and everything's ready to go, and you're just on the point of doing something big. Maybe that created a bit of anxiety that led him to the crash. I'm not exactly sure, but sometimes you got to. It's not all about science. It's not all about numbers, and you've got to actually put it together on game day. And so, but yeah, he was in great shape. Everything was good. The training went well, and unfortunately, it wasn't to be. So let's hope it's going to be a rough road from here until the Vuelta, and hopefully that he can put it together once again and give it a crack in the Vuelta.
Hey, when he did crash, mate, initially, obviously, a team like yours, you're going there to win the thing with Lander. Immediate disappointment, I would imagine. But the team bounced back really quickly. The very next day, were on the attack, chasing stages and things like that. You got that with Maida, with Gino Maida, and then obviously a great result in the overall classification. You also lost Matthew Morick with a nasty crash as well. Is there someone within the team that was at the Giro, whether it was the management or within the rider group, that gets them around, that gets them up and going again after a disappointment like we've lost our main guy, we're going to have to refocus? Was there anyone in particular that was driving that?
Well, it's a funny. There was Goratz. He's the lead director, and he did a fantastic job in the Giro. But it's a funny situation because I'll go a little bit, tell you a little bit more, because I was actually in the Tour of Hungary first stage, and we did a shit job actually. We did a really bad lead out, and we won. And so there was the lows of like the boys didn't do a very good job. We won, had a great, fantastic. Pulled into the car park. The phone rings. There's the manager of the team, and he said, "Firstly, congratulations. Secondly, Lander just crashed, and he's out of the Giro." Oh, great, and so we did. We had a few phone calls, and what are we going to do here, and what are we going to do there, and we sort of tried to do the best job we could over in Hungary, but Gorat sort of just got the boys reunited. Said, right, let's just refocus. And that's the really hardest point, was because it's like a flock of sheep, really. The sheepdog's gone. Well, bloody hell, the sheep go everywhere. Just get them back together again and get them going. And that's the role of a director most of the time, isn't it?
That's a good analogy. Yeah, I can just see the sheep just going.
You need someone with a sheriff's badge, mate. You just need someone with a sheriff's badge.
But how have you found coming into this new environment this year, Steve-O? Like, obviously you've had a lot of experience as a DS, as you said, come from Green Edge, you're at UAE. But how have you found this environment? What are some of the things and experiences you've been wanting to pass on? And your phone's just gone AWOL, mate. There we go. We're back.
Yeah. No, it's just us. Bloody work. Someone's ringing me. Yeah. It's obviously any change of team or any change of work situations is obviously you got to adjust, and you got to work in with the different people and work out how it's going. And I think the most important thing is slotting my experience into the team and to what it is. I'm not the head director here. That's fine. Let someone else be the head director. I was the head director in other teams in last year in UAE. But I've come in here, different role, a different situation, and I think the thing is that it's basically trying to adjust to that. Obviously, the different languages going on, different. The hierarchy of the team is from Croatia and from Slovenia, and so they just a bit of a different thought channel, and just adjusting to that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's about giving your bit of a try to put the best of your elements into the situation, and try to get the team to get the best out of that, I suppose, and just conforming with what your role is and where you fit in.
What are the plans? Obviously, we've got the big one coming up, the Tour de France. From a Bahrain Victorious perspective, what have they got planned for the lap around France?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. This year is a really tricky year with, firstly with the three major tours, and also with the Olympics thrown in the middle of it. But then also in our situation with the Lander crash as well, it sort of throws a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons. And so the big bike race for the world is the Tour de France. Obviously, 80% of the publicity from the team is in the Tour de France. But even before the start of the year, our team identified that the Vuelta and the Giro are the two main goals. So that's what we're going for. What that does for Bahrain, we still obviously go into the Tour de France with high expectations. But it's more about it's going for stages. And as far as the Australians go, it's really exciting actually, because Jack Hay is from the Green Edge days. He's going into the Tour de France as one of the leaders, along with Wout Poels and our sprinter Colbrelli, and he's going to get a fair bit of freedom and support, and to go for whether it's stages in the mountains or whether it's a higher GC, we don't really know. But Jack's had a tricky start of the season. He's fitting in with a new team, as I have. He's become a father, but he wasn't performing that well on his new time trial bike. He's worked really hard at that, and so he's really gone up another level as far as that's concerned. And so, on a personal level, and as an Australian, it's going to be really exciting, the Tour de France with Jack, and I'm really looking forward to that. But I think, fortunately for me this year, I've got a bit of a holiday in July with the family, and so I'll be watching Jack from the sofa this year, so which is really exciting for me.
Geez, how long since you've been on a holiday in July, Sheriff?
More the question, how long since I've actually been able to leave the house? Over here in Europe, the COVID's been been running amok, and so it's obviously the Tour de France is a really exciting race. But as far as a family, man, being able to be on holidays in July, it's a luxury, and we're getting out the first time in a year and a half that we've actually been able to leave the state of where I live here in Spain, and we're going to go on holidays, and so that's with my kids and the family, that sort of stuff. It's really exciting, and then I've got a lot of work to do, get ready for the Vuelta before that, and but I'll be enjoying the tour same as you guys from the television.
Well, we've joined you, mate. We've gone into lockdown as well now in Victoria, so we're not exactly smiling. But really, it's a big tick for you, Steve-O, that they've changed it and put you onto the Vuelta, because that's their main target, not the Tour de France. So really, to me, that seems to be a big tick for you.
Yeah, and it is. There was a moment there. I was on the Vuelta, planning on the Vuelta, then went over to the Tour, and then after the Atlanta crash, I went back over to the Vuelta again. But it's not. I'm not putting the Tour down. The Tour is a fantastic race. It's a beautiful race, and it's great to have been involved in it. In many different areas as a bike rider, as a director, and for many different years. But the Vuelta is my home race that I've lived in Spain for 30 years now, and I know the race. I enjoy the race. I know the technical directors. I know the terrain, and I really enjoy rolling my sleeves up and getting into it. It's be like you getting back into doing the Sun Tour once again. And so for me, it's just a natural thing, and to be able to go there with a guy, hopefully, if he gets over his injuries, we can give the podium a crack, or give the GC a crack. And get in there. It really, I think I'd enjoy that a lot more than heading off to one more Tour de France, really. So it is. It's nice that the Vuelta, the team, to sort of recognise the fact that I could be an important element in the Vuelta, but to be able to go there and do that, it's really, I'm really proud of.
Mate, people would have seen on the backstage pass, you took more selfies with the bloody fans than the riders at the Vuelta. Hey, Neil Stevens, photo. You bloody love it, mate.
We got it. I love it. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Hey, you mentioned Jack Haig. He's been named in the Australian team for the Olympic Games as well, and that's only 6 days after the end of the Tour de France. Is there much input from you and the pro team from Bahrain Victorious with what his role is going to be and his preparation and everything for the Olympic Games, working with Oz Cycling? Is there much of a connection in all of that?
Yeah, I've really separated myself a little bit from that. I talk to Jack now, and I give my sort of opinion and that sort of stuff. But I prefer to leave him and the high performance manager and the head director to talk about how that's going to pan out with Jack himself, because Jack's a mate of mine, and he's a fellow Aussie, and so I'd love him to go and ride give his best for Australia, but the best for himself and that sort of stuff. But also, I recognise the fact that for the team, we want him to really focus on the Tour de France and just to get that out of the way. And so it's a really tricky thing to do well in the Tour de France and do well in the Olympics. Perhaps the way to go. I'm not too sure what I read. Yates might be going to the Tour de France. That's fantastic as well. But maybe if you go to the Tour de France and go for stage wins, that can give you a good preparation for the Olympic Games. But I tend to think that if you go looking at GC, it's a pretty taxing. Well, it's a very taxing race. It's the biggest race in the world. But to go from GC in the Tour, then on to the Olympic Games might be a little bit too much of an ask. But if you go there looking for high placing stages, have a rest on other days, and maybe not empty the tank out too much, you can do a good Tour de France. But like I said, I really haven't given my opinion on that to anybody, really.
Guys, we'll just have a bit of a pause button. We'll have a word from our great mates at Bike Exchange and Iffy. That'll give you a chance to think of some good questions as we continue our chat with Neil Stevens.
Look at this bike. You think it's just a bike, right? But it's not. It's a bike. 374 people are looking at. This guy, this girl, them, all looking at it. People from here, there, and wherever this is. People that are looking for a bike. Or just a piece of it. Amateurs, semi-amateurs, and pro-amateurs. This guy wants this bike, but with this crank and these bars. This could be the perfect match. But not this one. This girl has a bike to sell, and thousands of people might purchase it. Eyes on Bikes help grow small businesses. His, hers, yours, and the latest data and insights help those businesses keep moving. We are the world's #1 bike marketplace, with over 500,000 products and 900 brands, where buyers and sellers are brought together in a place where a bike is never just a bike. Bike Exchange, where the world buys, sells, learns, and rides.
Thanks again to our mates at Bike Exchange. I'll get through a few viewer questions and comments. Of course, Wendy Superfan, thanks for all the podcasts with all the guests telling their tales and keeping us excited throughout the Giro. Keep up the good work. And then she backs it up with, good to see the sheriff on. Samantha says, I love how Caruso patted his teammates on the back as he was passing them on the climb. Jason from the Maldives says, it was an exciting Giro with underdog wins and many teams getting a win. Could Caruso be the happiest second-place rider in recent history? Free Ranger says a pay rise for Caruso next season. Now, Steve, are you part of the accounts team as well, mate?
No, I'll give them all a pay rise, mate, especially one of the directors.
That's it. James B says, old Neil Simons, I think Stevens, bring back backstage memories. Now, Rick wants to know, what are Heino's plans? Heinrich, how's all that being? Yeah.
Now, there's one of the most positive things about being in Bahrain. I've actually got to know Heino. I've always sort of seen him from a distance, and I've rubbed shoulders or I've done shared chats with Heino many times throughout the year. And what's Heino up to? He had a really good cyclocross season. First time he's actually been involved in the cyclocross season, and right from Paris-Nice, like one of the first bike races of the year, he's already talking about next year's cyclocross season. And so he's a guy who just loves it. He loves getting in and involved with the boys and giving it some stick and having a good of a go and that sort of stuff. And he was really heavily involved in a couple of wins we had in Hungary, Tour of Hungary last week. I'm not too sure where Heino is now at the moment, but he's having a bit of a break through July as well, and then coming back for the end of the season. But he's really looking forward to getting involved to the end of the season. Like he's a major player in a lot of the sprint type finishes, and once again back into the cyclocross next year.
We had him on the podcast earlier this year, and I gave him a heads up because I said, "Oh, you're working with Steve?" And he goes, "Yeah, I don't know him a little bit, but not really well." And I said, "Oh, I'll give you a heads up, a few little pointers." I told him about the green texter and the red texter. I said, listen, mate, it's a whiteboard marker, the first red strike. Don't get two because that's impermanent, mate. You can always get the first one rubbed off, but if you get that second cross, that's it. But I said on the flip side, if you do the right thing, listen to what he says, and you win his trust, you'll get the green tick. Now, if you get that green tick, mate, you're a mate for life. That's it. So I think from what you just said, he might be in the green territory. Yeah.
Well, it's funny, like Heino, I don't think he might. I share a little story. The first stage in Hungary, as I said, we did a pretty poor job. I think all of the directors involved as well, and his teammate won. And the next day we had the meet, and we sort of said, "Oh, okay, guys, what happened here? What happened there?" And Heino was he was there, but on the wrong side of the bunch, and he couldn't get over to the boys and that sort of stuff. And I said to everyone, I think we all have to look at ourselves and see if we could have done it a bit better there, fellas. Otherwise, we can't aspire to win again. And bloody hell, Heino didn't put a foot wrong the rest of the week. He was bloody amazing. And he's a guy that he's got the red Texas way over in the cupboard.
Sensational. So I want to take you back a little bit, Steve.
There we go. Another story. Let's go.
Where's the detour DeLorean when you need it?
Oh, hang on. All right.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
I'm just going to change that title to Iffy's Stories.
Well, I'm going to go back. My last real season was 81, where I rode that Giro and stuff. I was going to have 1 year off, and then I managed to run into a tree at 160 kilometres an hour and break most of the bones in my body. So that was the end of that. But I made a little, of course, we're watching Steve. I was just starting to come up. I raced against him. He was a bit too young, and then he was suddenly becoming a star. Watched him. He was a very good track rider and all that. But I made a comeback in about, I'm not sure, 86, 87, whatever. And I just rode mostly a few club races now, but I was bopping along all right. I beat Venny to win one club race, and he was a reigning Australian road champion and sprint champion, so I was pretty happy with that. Rolled him. Anyway, I had a Victorian road title. Thank you. Yeah. I'm going to put my bags up. You'll never do it, Jonesy.
That's right.
So there was a Victorian road title in Geelong, around that circuit where we have around through Eastern Guards, where we have one of the crits, and it was actually the same circuit that I won first Aussie road title on when I was a youngster. Anyway, Steve-O, you won that. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Do you remember what year it was?
Yeah.
It would have been in the
I can't remember.
mid to late 80s. You were just starting to really get going. I think you might have just won the Sun Tour that year or the year before. And I got almost to finish. I blew it with about 10, it was 200K. And I blew about 10K to go. But I remember riding next year. So at least I can remember one race we raced together. But my question is, and
that was a long story to get to that punchy
leading
bit,
in,
John.
okay. But then I realised this bloke had a bit of talent, and I got him his first contract in the World Tour, and into his first Grand Tour. He rode for Gianni Savio.
That's good.
In the Giro. What year was that?
85, I reckon. It was when I rode I reckon 85, 86 or something like that. Yeah, so went from riding the Australian track championships, went to Europe, raced one day race or two, and then straight to the Giro after that. 23 years old.
Yeah.
Bang.
Yeah. Yeah, great contract. I think they paid you about $100,000 or something like that. I can't remember what it was.
Mate, the contract there, I must say that I was promised nothing, and I was put into a hotel, and I had a television. No, I didn't even have a television. Didn't have a book. Didn't have anything. And the wife of the manager said, "Nah, I'm not going to have a bloke like that sitting over in a hotel room on his own." And they took me into their house. They treated me like a son, and like I said, I was promised nothing. I was given heaps, not money, but I was given opportunities. We went off to the Giro. I'm just only saying the other day, we went off to the Giro with a van and 2 race cars, and that's what it was. These days you've got bloody trucks and kitchen trucks and all that sort of stuff. But it was a fantastic adventure. And I remember that when the Giro finished, everyone was looking forward to getting home and catching up with their family and that sort of stuff. And I was actually sad because I had to just go back to being on my own again. But all that was actually back to the hotel room when she took me over to their house, And so I've still got a good relationship with those people. They're bloody fantastic people. And you've got to be thankful for what you did for me, Johnny, but also for what they did for me when I got to Italy.
No, you're the one with the ability, mate. But moving on from that, you were a Canberra boy, and some said, bit of a redneck. I wouldn't have said that. Others have said that. But I remember there was the family Falcon GT. Your old man had a GT. Should have been a phase 3, but he wouldn't pay the extra $100. And only got the phase 1 or whatever it was. But and you ended up buying it back a few years later. Have you still got it?
No, I bought that. I bought the GT back. I remember one time after the Tour of France, first ever Tour of France I rode, I had a few bucks in my pocket from the prize money, and then sitting around having a few beers, thinking about buying a Mustang or something, like a muscle car, and then we end up, me and my brother Marco, we tracked the my old man's GT down. When he died, he bought it for $3,700. When he died, we sold it for $12,000. And then we tracked it down again many years later. It had done 500 mile in 10 years or whatever. And I tracked it down. I bought it back for 20 grand. And, I had it in the shed for many years. And I used to go back from Europe and drive it every now and again. And one time I was on the, just playing around the internet, and I realised that they'd actually gone up a fair bit. And so I bought it in 92 for 20 grand, and I think 10 years later I sold it for 120. So I chuffed that off. Yeah, bought myself a brand new motorbike. Yeah, so it was actually great to have the GT, but it was a shame because I used to drive it a couple of 100 mile every couple of years, and that was all I did. So
what would it be worth now?
About 500.
Well, Steve, you'd be interested, Steve-O. There was a whatever in the last year that they made the Holden Commodore here in Australia. They had their special vehicle edition, whatever it was, in their Commodores. But they also made 4 Utes in the same spec as it was like 100 cars, sedans, but only 4 Utes. One of those Utes got auctioned off only a couple of months ago for $1 million or over $1 million.
Yeah.
Incredible. That was 2017 car.
But on the upside, and it's nice. It's a nice story, and it would have been nice probably to have the GT still. But on the other side of it, I also had an SS Ducati, an old one, and used to break down every now and again. I had the GT parked beside it, and so what I did when I sold the GT off, I bought a brand new Ducati Super Sport Classic. It's a fantastic bike. It's still only got 5,000 K on it, and it's parked in my brother's garage. And every time I go to Australia, I get on there and have a bit of a ride. And so I've got a nice, reliable Ducati. Still a spectacular machine. So I've still got a bit of a spectacular machine back in Australia.
So my last question along those lines is: will you ever get back to Australia, as in to live, or you think no, it's done and dusted now? Your family's all Spanish. That's where you'll end up.
Oh, you're going to have to keep your voice down. You sort of scoured the room there.
Yeah, but this just walked in. Yeah. So it depends. It depends if I get the divorce papers, I suppose. Yeah. So, no, the thing is, when you get involved in an international relationship, you got to think. Well, then you got to sort of give and take. And when Mrs. and I first got together, we sort of said, like, whatever. If there's work in Europe, I'll stay in Europe. If there's work in Australia, we'll go to Australia. Anyway, many, many years later, we're still together. Thankfully, 25 years last year, and been married. But also, we've got 3 kids, multilingual, multinational kids. Very, very proud of being Australians. And I get back to Australia without COVID. I get back to Australia every year. The kids and my missus and I, we go out every couple of years back out to Australia, and so they feel very proud of being Australians. But yeah, I'll be based here in Europe, but probably part of me is you're never going to get rid of me out of Australia, I suppose.
Well, the rate COVID's going, geez, international bloody borders could be a while before you can just casually pop on a plane. So anyway, Hey Neil, I wanted to ask you. Do you want to go first, Scotty? I was just going to say the you're talking about the old memories there and the evolution of being a DS. Even in my time at Green Edge, I saw a big transformation in your style on how you connected and communicated with the riders. And one of the big clips we showed on this show last year with Buells was that 2016 Tour of Spain when Esteban clawed back a minute and a half to topple Contador, but there was a real buy-in to the group. And that was your ability to enable the riders to feel like shareholders, when traditionally the old school way was very like a dictator. This is what the plan is, this is what you're doing, and that's it. How much have you had to evolve in your style as a director over that journey?
Yeah, I suppose I have really. I think any modern director gets involved in that. It's not as military as it was. It used to be. Like I'll say this and you do that, and I'm the. You're going to do what I say. I think that you got to always remember that the stars of the show are the boys. The bike riders are the stars, and we can never think that we're the most important people and we're going to make this decision or whatever. And so I think I've always had in my mind that you might have a fair idea of what you want to happen in the bike race, but it's a matter if the boys actually make that decision, even if it's the decision that you wanted them to make, they'll get involved in it a lot more. And so I tend to think that the sports modern day sports director, or at least the way I see my job is we're about creating an environment where the boys can make a decision and can create an environment. And what we should be doing with them all the time is just giving them the faith to know that they can, and they've got the capacity to move ahead, and they've got the capacity to make those decisions, and maybe just support them in those decisions. And because at the end of the day, they're the ones that got to carry the role out. I suppose I've learned a lot of that through with my kids as well. It's not about making those decisions for them. It's about creating an environment and giving them that support to know that those decisions that they're making are the correct ones, and they'll move ahead.
my favourite memories of that, which was a wonderful clip that you did, Dan, to put all that together, because it was an enormous stage. It was just so well implemented, and I love the way that you tried to. You knew what you wanted them to do, but you didn't want to tell them. So the way you changed it around, Neil, to make it. But my favourite part was when you tried to get the guy to wait, and he was rolling along.
Damien Housen.
What do you mean? Stop!
He goes, "Hey, Macca, is he stopped?" He goes, "Oh, no, he's about." He goes, "Back." He goes, I told him to stop. We got Condor breathing down our ass." He goes, "All right, he stopped." That was an unbelievable day. That.
Yeah. It was a bloody funny story, and I'm really thankful that Dan was in the car with me that day, because I said, "Now he stopped, hasn't he, Macca?" And that was when the radio, he went over the crest of the hill and so he couldn't hear me, and so there was a couple of minutes of nothing until we finally said, "No, he's just rolling along, mate." And I sort of expressed my disappointment. And then
you handed me the mic at one point. I'm like, "What do you want me to do? I don't want to get caught up in this shit." So I was like, "Oh, Macca, can you tell him to stop, please?"
But eventually, we a couple of minutes later, well, I don't know how many minutes later, I actually got back to Macca and I apologised for any bit of heated statements that I might have made at the time, and so Macca understood that. It was good. Yeah.
Well, because you spoke, Johnny, about how you raced with Neil once or twice, or what it was back in the day. I actually raced as a teammate of Neil's in his retirement race, the 1998 Commonwealth Games road race. And I must say, as a small group of 5 riders, we were going in as bad as the stronger team, with Stuart O'Grady, Jay Sweet as our sprinter, Pete Rogers, Michael Rogers' brother, Matt White, and Steve and I. And Neil was obviously the captain and calling the shots, and it was in a very relaxed but inspirationally Aussie way. It was, you didn't command, we didn't need to make commands of us or anything. We just talk tactics, talk it through. It worked out well for us. We come away with a win with Jay Sweet, which was still one of those, for me, it's one of the funniest moments. Luckily we won, but with the temperatures there in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, were pretty high. The humidity was just outrageous. We had these woolen jerseys, sport wool, supposed to be some new fabric. I don't know, it didn't last that long because we were just sweated like bastards. But Jay Sweet sprinted for the line, got the win, and I went straight to him afterwards to give him a big hug, and he screamed at me to not hug him because he was in a full body cramp. And he was lucky to actually come away with the win itself. And at first, when I crossed the line, I thought, "Oh, we haven't won," because all the media ran to the second place rider who was from Malaysia. But that was such a big thing for a Malaysian to run second at the Commonwealth Games in a road race that they all just flocked to him. And I thought, "Oh, bugger, he's got rolled. Oh, my God." And I got to Jay as he was having his full body cramp. And he said that he did win the race. I did win the race. I'm thank God for that. But, that was a good experience, Steve. It was nice for me to be. I remember, I partnered with Freuler in his final ever 6-day race in Zurich, on home soil, and I still remember, wow, what an honour that was for me, and it was an honour to see you bow out, mate, and be a teammate of yours.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It was a great memories, and I just can't help it. If you've got a couple of minutes, I'll tell you a quick story. Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it, mate.
Yeah,
do you want me to
go.
Hey, I'll wait 2 seconds.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Go for it, mate.
I don't know if you remember, mate. There was the dining hall in Malaysia. It was huge, big dining hall, and there was it was just airplane food. It was not that good. But we over many sessions in the dining hall there, we got to know a couple of, I think they were Indians, or I don't know where these fellas were from, or some African country. I'm not exactly sure where they're from.
The
And we
Kenyans.
used to chat with
The Kenyans.
Kenyans.
Yeah.
And we used to chat to these fellas. This tall fella and one little fella, and he's chatting, and the little fella was the talkative one, and the tall fella was just whatever. And we used to say, we used to egg him on. I think we used to give him spare tires and a bit of racing kit and that sort of stuff. Anyway, got to talking. I said, we're saying to the boys, what's your specialty? And one of them said, yes, I'm a very, very good 5,000 meter runner. And I said, a runner? You mean a rider? He said, no, I'm a runner. He said, but the athletics team was too hard to get into, so he was a bike rider. And then we sort of said, what are your aspirations in the race? And one of them wanted to get to the kilometre zero. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, because they'd in was it Canada or whatever, they fell off in the neutral zone. They didn't make it to the kilometre zero. And that's where they wanted to go through. And at the start of the race, these the gentlemen, they used to call them these gentlemen, they were riding along beside each other, arguing with each other. We didn't know what was going on. They were arguing. And then they stopped. They got off and they changed bikes. They'd gone on the wrong bike at the start. And one was like 2 meters tall, one of them was 170. And like that trip, like the bike race was fantastic. We won the bike race, but those sort of memories of that trip to KL, like that was bloody heaps of them. It was fantastic. I'm really glad we could share them together. So it was great.
Yeah. I think one of them went in the first move. Like it didn't last long, but I'm pretty sure one of them, because we're all pretty chuffed for him. We're there to try and win the bike race. But we're so happy to see the guys having a go. Yeah, it's hilarious.
Oh yeah, and after the race, we got together with the boys again, and they. Just fantastic to see these people from these minority countries to just get in and they were sitting at the table and they're saying, oh my goodness, it's J Street. Oh, we're racing with J Street. And then they say Stuart. I go, oh, Stuart O'Grady. Oh.
That's awesome.
They said, you gentlemen, I got to really make us tougher.
But that is something that's really special about the Commonwealth Games. It's also one of the things that's very dangerous about the Commonwealth Games is that the standard of a lot of the riders is some of them just learning to ride. I remember there was one team from somewhere in Africa when I rode 970 in Edinburgh, they didn't have bikes. They got given bikes by Carlton Rally, whatever. They'd only ridden around on like normal mum and dad's bike type thing. That's all they had back in Africa. So their first attempt at riding bikes was there. But at least we were very lucky in Edinburgh. It was a really hard circuit with a monster climb. It was only about a 5K circuit. Went to climb the mountain, 30-something times. So they all got spat on the first lap. So they were, for the danger side, that they weren't there. But on a flat course like in Malaysia, that would have been, I expect, pretty dangerous for quite a while.
Well, hey, you talk about danger. Before you jump in, Steve-O, the biggest crash at the Commonwealth Games wasn't in the road race. It was in the time trial, and it was by a guy that was about a minute and a half up on his way to win the gold medal. And Stuart O'Grady absolutely flying into one of the corners. And I remember watching it I wasn't at the circuit that day. I was watching it on telly, and you're watching the guys come downhill around this corner. Oh, yeah, down around, and you get used to the speed that you're seeing these guys come through. And then I remember, like, just before the crash, for a split second, I'm thinking, geez, Stewie's going fast. And he was just hooking down the hill into the corner and just toasted himself. That was the biggest crash. So you talk about the inexperienced guys being the most dangerous. In that case, it was one of the most experienced that's absolutely binned himself.
Hey, he's missing half his freckles now.
Hey, Neil, one guy I want to ask you about is Alan Piper. You obviously had a bit to do with getting him across to UAE, and obviously the successes that they had, particularly at the Tour de France last year. And obviously, he's been of ill health for a while now, but you must be really proud of the progression that he's had in particularly his DS career and the success of the UAE team at the Tour last year.
Yeah, and it is. It's. I've really enjoyed, like the last few years I spent with Alan, and that was actually one of the hard things for me to do when I left UAE to separate myself with Alan. And it was when you say that I got him, I got him into to UAE. Well, I just reminded the management of the talent that Alan has. It wasn't as if I put a round. A square peg in a round hole. He's a very talented director. He's multilingual, and I said to the team that what we needed was a guy with the passion that could go to the Belgian races. He knows the Belgian language. He knows the Belgian roads, and we needed a Belgian-driven type person to go to those races. And so, yeah, he got the job because he's good at it, not for any other reason. And so he went on from there. His passion with the Tour de France, his relationship with Tadej, and it was a really special moment when he got in and not only during the Tour de France itself, all the build up to the Tour de France, all the recons of the races. I know there was times where the team didn't support the recons. Well, he went off and did it on his own. He did many things, and he really suffered. I suppose knowing that he was having a bit of a battle on the other side of the fence was maybe gave him even a bit of a more of a drive, I suppose. But and then for him to be a major part of it, to be able to pull off the Tour de France win was special for me. It was really brought a tear to my eye. And so I've had a bit of a struggle over the last couple of years with his him being crook, and but just his passion in life and the way he goes about things is really motivating as well. And we had dinner just the other day after Amstel together, and we had a bit of a laugh, and with COVID distances and that sort of stuff. But it was great to catch up with him again, and we catch up with each other by message and phone every now and again. But I think the most important thing about that is many years ago in the Sun Tour we had a bit of a flare up. Years later we patched it up, and the years together we spent, especially the years in UAE together, were great years, and I'll remember them for forever. And so he's having a bit of a struggle now. He knows that if he wants a bit of a chat, he can ring up and catch up, and as I do with him sometimes when I'm having a bit of a hard time. And so he's a great mate.
Is that one of the? It's going to say so. Getting him onto UAE finally settled the scorecard for pinching the Sun Tour.
I didn't pinch it, mate.
Hey, Neil, is that one of the things that people don't probably understand or know about is just how much preparation goes into a Grand Tour? Like, can you give people watching and listening a bit of an insight that all the stuff that goes into in the months in advance, like what do you have to do to prepare? I talk about the Vuelta, for example. How much has to go into that prep?
Yeah, I think it starts off real early. You don't sort of say, okay, here's Dan Jones, he's not going to race the Tour de France. You might get a Tour de France that doesn't suit you. In the Tour de France this year, for example, it doesn't suit Mikel Landa. It's got too many kilometres of time trials. He's never going to win it. He might do a good placing, but he's never going to win it. So let's attack a race that actually they can actually do well in or to win. So that it goes right back to the early stages when the route's announced. Then you start to look at a bit of a skeleton plan about where your key riders can fit in. Different races throughout the year. Then your secondary riders fit in around those as well. Then you try to actually achieve things all the way throughout the year. Then when you start to talk about the event itself, the more race information comes out, the more you can investigate. We can win, we can gain time here, we can lose time here. Certainly in my case, and directors similar to me, we actually go out and physically drive the roads. We might see different weather conditions, different road conditions, different situations, and then we start to form a bit of a tactic as well. And so there's months and months of work that goes into events like the Tour de France or any event, really, any major event. And more than anything, I suppose a director then becomes a project manager. It's like if you're going to build a block of flats. You've really got to get passionate about it. You've got to know the elements. You've got to know the hotels. You've got to try to adjust to the hotels that where the transfers. You can pull a few different favours every now and again as far as that's concerned. And so I think a head director of any different of a race like the Tour de France or the Giro or the Vuelta is more a project manager rather than just a sports director, I suppose.
I remember one example that blew me away was, I think it was a time trial, and because you'd done the recon, you knew that it was going to be a 5K ride from where the buses were going to be to the start. So then it was like, well, we're going to need rollers because it's going to be too long, the difference. But if you don't do those recons, if you don't know the circuits back to front, they're things that on the day you go, oh, shit, we didn't plan for that. And that could be the difference between a ride of 15 seconds if they haven't had the right prep.
And that's right. And I tend to think that some of the bigger teams, they actually have other people, apart from the sports directors, to look at those small little details. Like, for example, another Vuelta we went to, the first time trial, as a team's time trial, it was the parking was such that we weren't going to be able to, it was going to be tricky. And I got the staff to drive the night before, parked it. I slipped a few dollars to a farmer just next door, and we parked our vehicles on his property instead, And so all those sort of things, that there's the project managers are sometimes actually extra people that are not involved in the sports decisions as well. And so, they're all sort of things that years of experience, I suppose, they think, I wish we had done this, or we could have done that. Well, then you go back and you sort of say, no, let's address those situations. They may make a difference, they may not. There may be 95% of the time it'll be okay, but it's those 5% of the real gems that may make a difference.
So does that mean, considering everything's so well thought out, the bus on the first stage of the Tour de France, that was actually planned just for extra publicity to make sure the team got some bang for buck? Is that what you're saying? Wasn't an accident. Do
I need to press that DeLorean button again? Or?
just the mute.
Well,
I'll take that as a no. It wasn't planned.
On a publicity level, everyone knew about greenheads, didn't they?
Exactly. Well, I just remember the footage of you in that car too, and you honestly look like a toddler that had just shit his pants because you coordinated Gary to drive the bus down. And Gary said to you, I don't know if I'm meant to be on the road. You go, well, he's let you on. Just go, mate. Like, you were talking to him on the phone. And then when you got it, when you saw the vision, I just remember your face just going like, and then you could see you sinking in your seat. Oh, mate.
I was standing right next to the bloody finish line. I could not believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I remember also.
I tell you what, who won? Not many people remember who won that day, though. Everyone remembers about the bus.
Kittel.
Kittel. Yeah, Marcel Kittel.
The hot kettle.
We do, but no, Court was funny. I remember him saying, because with the bus, you guys all know the story. For those that may not remember, with the bus getting stuck, they couldn't get it out. Didn't think they were going to get it out before the finish of the stage. Bunch sprint, first stage, flat, fast, full gas. And the peloton was just coming at that finish so quick. And then they made the decision to have the finish line 3Ks from the actual finish line. And they communicated that to everybody in the race, whatever, through all the race radios. And then at the end, when the bus got cleared, then it went back to they're actually going to finish at the finish line. I remember Kunde Court after the stage said to me, he said all he actually heard, he didn't hear about the bus or what they were doing with changing the finish line. All he heard was the finish will be at the finish line. And he's thinking, well, where else is it going to be? That's a stupid thing to say. So he was confused. He didn't know about the drama until afterwards.
But it was much worse than that, Scotty, in that that message never got to everyone. So some teams heard about a change going at 3K to go, and there was no place to finish at 3K to go. It's just where there was recording section, so they'd be able to clock the times, but there was no straight or no. It would have been the greatest disaster of all time. I don't know what would have happened there.
It was funny because there was all that havoc happening, and it was whether we could finish in one place, whether we could finish in another place. And my feeling of, geez, I really stuffed up this time, and what my next year's job was going to be, and that sort of stuff. But in the middle of all that, I looked at the bus, and it was parked underneath the finish line thinger, the beam. I remember looking at it and seeing this jet of steam come up, and I thought, bloody
your baby. Your baby, yes.
Well,
because you designed the bus.
Yeah, that was my bus. My little fellow always calls it Daddy's bus, but I remember looking at it, and it was probably the least of the problems. But I was looking at it, bloody air conditioner, shit.
There's one split second when I was watching the whole process of them trying to get, someone said, oh, let the tyres down a bit. They got a forklift thing. There was one split second where the finish structure nearly went down. It didn't last long, but it toppled, and then they lowered it, and finally they got it out. How they did that, I'll never know. And Gary did a great job, but it was just. But they blame you, they blame Gary, but you can also blame Jerry, because it was Jerry who said when he got down there. No, you won't, but I will.
No, careful. We might be getting Wi-Fi issues.
Jerry said, where's the bus? And they said, oh, because the hotel's only a few hundred metres away, we said straight there. He said, oh, I thought we reckon that Gossie can win this stage. Where's the press going to go if Gossie wins the stage? I went, oh, yeah. So that started them all thinking about it, and then the whole process happened after that. So I'll blame you.
Well, maybe that's the point. But the fact is, why was the bus at the hotel? And that was my fault. That's the reason it was my fault, because I started the process. I sent the bus to the hotel. I then tried to bring it back to the finish, and the rest is history.
Well, it's a good example.
You're not on the team anymore, mate. It took him a long. He never got over it. He finally said, "No, that's it."
Well, it's a good example of you can do all this planning, Neil, and sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you might overthink it.
Yeah, it happens.
That's it. Well, it's been fantastic bloody insights, mate. We've really loved having you on the show, and looking at the comments, they're still coming. Great Vuelta memories from Wombat Breath. Sam Bewley, Steve-O is a bloody legend. Brett Williams says one of the best backstage pass episodes. That's obviously stage 20 of the 2016 Vuelta. If you haven't seen it, get on YouTube. We've got one from Alex, says the Sheriff was thinking the other night it'd be great if you got Neil on. Thanks for the last 3 weeks, fellas. It's been super. And Simon Knowles says met Neil and his brother Brian in Canberra back in 1988, rode the Nationals and got a lot of respect for Neil. We've got another one from John Donnelly, says, can you ask the Sheriff how the team spirit compares between Bahrain and Bike Exchange? Watching the backstage pass, Bike Exchange seemed to have a really good team spirit.
Compare? I don't know if you can actually compare. The thing is, it's like I've got fantastic memories working with all you fellas, not Scotty, but the rest of you fellas in Green Edge. They were great memories. I wouldn't change it for the world. But now I'm in a different team, different environment, different way of going about things, and it's good. Yeah, it's got good points and bad points. But the thing is, it's really dangerous to compare different areas, and so I'm just thankful that I was involved in Green Edge, the Green Edge story, from the start until wherever I got off the train. And so I'd prefer not to compare things, but just say that I'm really enjoying what I'm doing at the moment as well.
Good stuff, mate. Anything you want to add before we let Neil go and wrap the show up, boys?
No, not at all.
From me, absolutely sensational to have you on, Bud, and looking forward to catching up when this COVID crap gets out of the way and having a quiet one.
Bloody
and from me, mate, if you need someone just to keep the motor going on the Ducati, just let me know. I'll pop into Canberra and take it for a few Ks. No problem, buddy.
Yeah, the worst thing about the Ducati is my brother, he looks after it. He gets it out every now and again, but he's got a bit of a pot belly going, so it's hard to get into the position. Get your belly off just in case, mate.
All right, we'll do.
I'm
riding a bit. Yeah. I'm riding a bit. I'm fine. That's good. Yeah, good to see you, Neil.
As we say to everyone, youtube.com/The Detour Podcast. Been brilliant having you on, Steve-O. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for all your support during the Vuelta. We'll be back soon because there's plenty of bike racing coming up, so we might be back at the end of the week to look at the Dauphiné. But thanks again to all your support. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you again soon. Take it easy.
Night, fellas.
This